Just going to do a quick voice check here.
Before we get started, how do we sound?
In 2016, I sold a tube of American Gold Eagles for $12.50 per ounce. I walked away with $25,000, and maybe that's an example of why you shouldn't sell your gold without significant cost, because that same tube of gold today would be worth about $12,000 more. It might also be an example of how premiums and other costs can make it a more expensive way to save, because I lost around $1,500 on that sale, selling the gold for less than I bought it. Now we're going to ignore some of that. I have a fragile ego. We're just going to run through the mechanics of making a similar sale, focus on what we could expect today. So we're going to look at some pricing, we're going to talk about some specific options that we have to sell, and more or less ignore the fact that I lost a little bit on that particular sale and a little bit more by selling at a bad time, partly because it's just not really relevant. That was about specific timing. Nothing I do in the future is going to match those same circumstances, and then partly because there's also a lot more to that story of that sale. I had a significant cause. I bought a property, and then on top of that, I bought that gold using cash that I'd carved out from a relatively loose budget. So that was money that maybe I would have otherwise wasted. And then if we just cut right to it, the property I purchased has appreciated a lot more than that $1,500 loss from the coin sale or the $12,000 in value that I guess I would have had today had I held on to it. So it's not something I look back on and regret, and I've been able to replace the gold I sold by now anyway, but that's not really the point. So let's look at a sale like that. Selling a tube of gold is going to be different than selling an ounce or two. If I want to sell a single coin, maybe even a few, I have a lot of options. I could list it on Reddit, Facebook, Craigslist. I could take it into a coin shop or jeweler, or I could sell it to an online dealer like JM Bullion. Those are the obvious options. But if it's a significant amount of gold, like a tube of 1 ounce coins or more, and I want to move it quickly, say inside of a month, there's really no way that I'm going to sell to a buyer that I don't trust. So big sales to me mean local coin shops or online dealers. So when I made that sale in 2016, we just didn't have as many options as we do today. Local coin shops, they were the clear place to go. I saw a video recently from a person calling a bunch of random shops using a voice modulator. And if I remember right, he didn't get reasonable options from those buyers. And it's part of the reason that I'm coming back to this topic again. I haven't gotten very deep into the buyback price, what you can expect to get. That really shouldn't be a big mystery, but knowing who to go to and how to handle sales above a certain level, I think that's the more important part than what a few random shops are offering. So let's just jump back to the video I referenced for a minute. The guy calling around using a voice modulator, I mean, just think how a car dealer would react if you called out of the blue sounding like a robot from the 80s and then asked them what they'd pay for your car. Now what they'd say is, bring it in, and then they'd assume you wouldn't. It's going to sound pretty fishy. Now, the caller I'm talking about wasn't rude in any way. He was just trying to protect identities, but I had a little bit of trouble following that video because each potential deal was dead on arrival. The buyer needs to be comfortable with you too. So starting off with a sketchy sounding voice modulator, it immediately tells them that you're hiding something from them. Now, luckily for us, I'm able to make my voice sound like a real person. So just to make sure the deal I got in 2016 isn't completely irrelevant today, I made 6 calls. I made 2 to local shops, 2 to shops that I'm familiar with out of the area, and 2 to shops that I really just picked at random. And in each case, I told them I have a tube of American Gold Eagles and a tube of American Buffaloes that could take their pick. I asked them if they were interested in buying either one, and then I asked them for a price. So the random shops that I picked, well, they both said they'd take Eagles or Buffaloes at spot. And when I said the coins were in perfect condition and it was open for 2% over spot, one said bring them in, and the other said spot was the best it could do. It more or less told me off. Now, I didn't ask the second one if he'd take the whole tube in a single purchase, but the first was interested. The other 4 shops, they all said they were interested in either tube. I guess one gave me it depends on timing. And they each quoted about 1 to 2% over spot. And actually, they all gave me numbers, but I have a calculator too. The shop owners I know, they confirmed they're using 2% over spot. So this is all pretty similar to what I got in 2016. My local shop offered 2% over spot for the tube at the time, if I remember correctly. I'm pretty sure. Now, timing today, it would work in my favor. I could possibly negotiate that higher, but that's a pretty short-term thing. Both my local shops said they already had orders in for 2023s, but they don't have anything on the shelves. And I've seen the same from the shops that I've stopped into recently. It's just a tough time for inventory. I'm trying to ignore that a little bit, but one did say that I would have to sell before his order came in mid to late January, or I might be waiting. He said it depends on his inventory any other time. So what I found all seems fair, and the transactions would all be pretty easy. 2% on top of spot, that's the lowest bid that I would take, and I don't think that that's overestimating. I'm going to get to online dealers in a minute, but before I do, there's an elephant in the room, and it looks a lot like a taxable event disclosure. Any cash transaction above $10,000 in the United States wins you an IRS Form 8300, and that happens locally or online. So if you're trying to keep it all mysterious, you can view that as a negative. But one thing to consider here is that if you're going to turn around and use those proceeds for something like a down payment on a property, well, the loan underwriters, they're going to want to know where you got it. They're going to require documentation from where that mysterious cash deposit came from. Now, in my case in 2016, I didn't have any problem drawing attention to a loss. I lost $1,500, so there were no capital gains. But yes, you will have gains taxes to consider if you have gains. Tax forms, they're going to make sure of that. And here in the United States, capital gains on bullion can be taxed up to 28%. So that's just something to consider with large transactions. And now that we're past the disclosure angle and we don't have to discuss how much we all enjoy taxes in the comments, we can cover the online dealers buyback programs. Now, any online transaction comes with a paper trail, and some people don't like that. You also have to ship your metals to the dealer. Some people don't like that either, but selling to an online dealer has gotten really easy lately. JM Bullion and APMEX both have very easy processes that even help with the process of sending the metals in. JM, they'll tell you exactly what they're willing to pay before you even reach out. So right now, we know they're paying 3% over spot for random year American Gold Eagles. So really not bad at all. This idea that it's all a mystery how much you'll get if you sell your gold and silver is probably only around because it's not as interesting to look into selling your metals as it is to look into buying them. And if you're afraid that timing might not be on your side, well, I found the 1% to 2% plus spot to be very consistent for, say, the past decade. For Eagles, Buffaloes, it's the same thing. Maples, Krugs, they've always been spot to me. And then less popular choices, it really depends on the dealer and what you're actually selling. Now, if you have any question, though, all you have to do is find the item on JM Bullion's site and look for the sell to us price. Or just give them a call. If you don't want to sell online, though, you should really reach out to some local dealers. If you want to make this easy on yourself down the road, be sure to buy standard bullion, popular items that dealers recognize, at least as your base. I try to create some uniformity here to really simplify things if I do need to sell. A tube of Eagles is still a unit. I don't have to get multiple quotes, so it's just as easy to get a price on a tube of Eagles as it is to get a price on one. Same goes for selling them. Everybody knows what they're getting, so it's just a lot easier to liquidate than selling 20 random coins. I think I alluded to this in the beginning, but if I'm not looking for a $25,000 sale or a $37,000 sale, if it's a smaller sale, I can probably find private buyers who will pay more. And I could probably sell any gold coins that maybe weren't the best choice to buy. I can just get away with a lot more than I can if I'm looking for that one big sale. I've found that I can sell just about anything as long as I have time and I'm willing to do some work. Where this whole thing gets important is how it relates to stacking larger percentages of savings in gold. I wouldn't be comfortable building up dozens or hundreds of ounces of gold if I didn't know how to quickly sell it in an emergency. I wouldn't want a $200,000 down payment locked up in gold without understanding the process to convert it back to cash. I wouldn't want $25,000 locked up. If my goal, though, was just to put a little bit away at a time, more or less as a hobby or something exclusively to hand down to my kids someday, then these rules of efficiency, they don't really apply. Somebody is going to have a little bit more trouble selling that Homer Simpson coin 40 years from now, but it won't be you. If you're thinking about this more seriously, though, and you plan to keep a significant amount of wealth in gold, I don't think that I can overstate just how important this is to understand the process of selling. It allows you a lot more options to sell quickly if something sneaks up on you, and it makes you more comfortable holding larger amounts, knowing that it's convertible wealth rather than just an object that you continually pay to accumulate but never plan to use. You might find that your local dealers won't buy more than a coin or two at a time, and you're going to want to know that. So at a minimum, I would recommend reaching out to a few local shops, if you have any in the area, and ask them what they buy, what they pay, and if there are any timing considerations. And if you don't have any local shops, give one of the online dealers a call. Because pricing, it depends on timing and who you're dealing with, and you don't want to leave that to chance if you ever need to use any of the gold or silver that you've built up. It's easier to buy than it is to sell, and I think that that's the most important takeaway. So if you have any information on selling in your area, I think it's good for all of us to know. We should all be familiar with our local selling options, but I just think it's good to know what others have found. And then while you're in the comments, be sure to hit that like button if you found any of this interesting. Be sure you're subscribed with notifications turned on if you'd like to see more on the topic. And if you're still here, thanks again for watching. I always appreciate your time. Take care.